My name is Arthur Henshaw, private detective, and I have spent the last 2 years chasing ghosts. Not literal ones, of course, but the kind that lingers long after their bodies are buried. My most confounding case began in the spring of 1889, when a nervous-looking solicitor knocked on the door of my cramped London office. "Mr. Henshaw," he began, his hands trembling, "I need someone with discretion. My client, William Henry Berry, has been charged with the murder of his wife. But there's something more." That something more was the faint, chilling suspicion that Berry might also be Jack the Ripper, the monster who terrorized Whitechapel the year before. My pulse quickened. William Berry was a wiry, sullen man with darting eyes that seemed to see threats everywhere. When I met him in the Dundee prison, he was gaunt, his lips dry and cracked. "Did you kill your wife?" I asked bluntly. I'd learned long ago not to waste time dancing around the truth. His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like a cornered animal. Then he nodded. "Yes, but it's not what they say." His voice cracked. "She was mad, you see, always accusing me of things. I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident." An accident. It was the same story every murderer told. Berry claimed he'd strangled Ellen in a fit of rage after a heated argument. He admitted to stuffing her body into a trunk and hiding it in their flat. It was his own nervous behavior that led to his arrest. Days after the crime, he'd confessed to a friend who alerted the police. But it was the details of the murder and the way he spoke about them that raised my suspicions. "She wouldn't stop screaming," he muttered, his hands twitching. "I had to make her quiet." His words sent a chill down my spine. They mirrored the accounts I'd read about the Ripper's victims, women silenced in the dead of night, their lives snuffed out with chilling efficiency. I decided to dig into Berry's life. Born in Stourbridge, he'd lived an unremarkable existence until moving to London in the late 1880s. It was there he met Ellen, a woman of modest means with a sharp tongue and a temper to match. Their marriage, by all accounts, was volatile. Neighbors reported shouting matches, crashing furniture, and Ellen storming out into the streets in tears. But what intrigued me most was Berry's time in Whitechapel. He had lived there during the Ripper murders, and his address placed him mere streets away from the crime scenes. The similarities between Ellen's death and the Ripper's victims nagged at me. While Ellen hadn't been mutilated, the violence, the rage, was eerily familiar. I visited Berry's flat in Dundee, where the murder had occurred. The room was small and dark, the air thick with the stench of decay. The trunk where Ellen's body had been found sat in the corner, a grim reminder of the crime. As I examined the room, a local constable handed me a sheet of paper. "Found this among his things," he said. It was a crude drawing of a knife, along with scribbled notes about anatomy. My stomach turned. "Did you find a knife here?" I asked. The constable shook his head. "Not a one. But his neighbors said he carried a blade in London, a big one." I pocketed the paper, my mind racing. Berry's trial was swift. The evidence against him, his confession, the state of Ellen's body, and his erratic behavior was damning. He was found guilty and sentenced to hang. But I wasn't satisfied. There were still too many unanswered questions. On the eve of his execution, I visited him one last time. "William," I said, leaning in close, "were you Jack the Ripper?" His eyes met mine, wide and unblinking. For a moment, he seemed to consider his answer. Then he laughed, a low, hollow sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Does it matter?" he said. "It matters to me," I pressed. He leaned back against the cold stone wall, his lips curling into a faint smile. Maybe I was. Maybe I wasn't. Either way, I'll take it to the grave. On April 24th, 1889, William Henry Barry was hanged. As the trapdoor fell and the rope snapped tight, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd just witnessed the end of the Ripper's reign, or if the real killer was still out there, watching, waiting. The case of William Barry remains unsolved in my mind. He was a murderer, that much is certain. But was he the murderer? The shadow of Whitechapel still lingers, and the streets grow quiet when the fog rolls in. Sometimes, as I walk those cobblestone streets, I hear whispers of a name that London will never forget. Jack. And as the darkness fades, remember, the real chills linger long after the story's end. Until next time, brave souls.